Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Dustin Hillis, Chair of the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started. I've been joined by my colleagues. To my far right, Councilmember Antonio Lewis. My immediate right, Councilmember Andrea Boone, and to my immediate left, Councilmember Byron Amos, and we do constitute a quorum. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda is adopted. I'll now make a motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting. Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. Prior approval, minutes from the prior agenda or meeting are approved. We will now move on to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
We have one. That is Mr. Devin Franklin.
Good afternoon, council persons. Devin Franklin, Movement Policy Council for the Southern Center for Human Rights. And today, what I would like to talk to you all about is kind of an intersection of things that I've discussed with this body before. I've frequently made comment as it pertains to the ineffectiveness of the priorly adopted ACDC lease. Most recently, I've made comments concerning processes and the overall intentions of the Cop City legislation. To begin, I would say that jail overcrowding is a consequence of over-policing. And the building of Cop City gets directly at the concerns of community about the results of potential harsh and aggressive over-policing options. And to the extent that City of Atlanta joins into joint agreements with Fulton County government to go forward with initiatives such as repeat offender initiatives or so-called repeat offender initiatives, and granting more space in its facilities for persons to be held in custody. I do believe that the city is just as responsible and accountable for the flaws within Fulton County systems as that entity is in of itself. And I say that acknowledging that there's data online through certain police accountability surveys and studies and projects that shows that Atlanta arrests people for low-level offenses, including misdemeanors and nonviolent crimes, at a rate that is 85% higher than other jurisdictions across the county. Not going to dispute that. What I would add, though, is that we oftentimes only have conversations about the effect of overcrowding and overpolicing when we have headlines. Most recently, there has been a headline made at Fulton County Jail as it pertains to one person in custody digging through a wall, I believe they said with a spoon, to attack a person in custody in a different cell. And I'm sure that Sheriff Patrick Labat will tell you that this is more evidence of the building not being in the proper condition to where it puts people in harm's way, which holds some truth. But what I would add to you is that the same facility in which the Fulton County government looks to help alleviate overcrowding, which is Cobb County, has a jail that is just about as old as our jail, and they don't have these issues. We do continue to purport that there is a problem, not necessarily with the building itself, but also with the maintenance of the building and those who are put in charge of it, namely Sheriff Patrick Labat. I previously asked that you all look into getting documents pertaining to the maintenance of that building. I look forward to receiving those from you all one day so that we all can just discuss those together. And additionally, as it pertains to the death of LaShawn Thompson, the man who had been eaten alive essentially by bed bugs, would like for you all to know that last week that someone had to be pulled out of court because they were seen to have bed bugs crawling on them, and so the issue hasn't been solved, and you all are still in bed with Fulton County. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. That concludes our public comments. Before we move on to presentations, we do have one communication, which is an appointment, and that appointee is here, so we will handle that first. It is 23C 5062.
A communication from council members Dustin Hillis, District 9, Andrea L. Boone, District 10, Marcy Collier Overstreet, District 11, Antonio Lewis, District 12, and Keisha Sean Waits, Post 3 at Large, appointing Mr. Quincy Jordan to serve as a member of the NREM Review Board for the City of Atlanta.
Jordan, welcome, and if you'll come up to the podium, tell us a little bit about yourself and your willingness to serve on the NREM Review Board.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Also, very much appreciate those that have appointed me for doing so. I am a native Atlantan. I know it's not that many of us anymore, but I am native Atlantan, homegrown all the way through. And went to Morehouse College, went to Georgia Tech. So again, Atlanta all the way through. My background is in that of management consultant as well as real estate. And so I look very much forward to the opportunity to help really, in some ways, bring our city back to where I feel like it was a very beautiful state. It's not that it's not beautiful now, but growing up, I did not recall seeing a lot of blighted buildings or houses. Never saw homes that were boarded up and just not taken care of, that type of thing. And I would like the same for the upcoming generation. So I see this as a great opportunity for me to do my part and contribute to that. And so there lies a significant part of my interests.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. This is favorable. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. This will move on to the Committee on Council next Monday, or a few Mondays. But you will not need to reappear at the Committee on Council or the full council meeting.
Just one correction. It's Jordan. You said Franklin a few times.
Yeah, Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
You won't need to reappear at any committees or the full council, and then once approved by the full council, you will be reached out to by our interim our interim city clerk for directions and taking your oath, et cetera. Councilmember Lewis.
Yeah, and I want to say congratulations, first of all, because
Thank you.
To be from the city and to represent the city, I heard it in your voice. I heard your passion about what you want to see and how you want to protect the culture, what we have here. So congratulations on being appointed to this. It's a very important role. My house, the house I grew up in, was a part of this. It was a house that was actually torn down. So we need to make sure we got the right people on that board, going to the meetings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Taking it serious. So we hope that I appreciate you for taking this responsibility. I can't wait to see you in the meetings and holding the other folks accountable who aren't coming to the meetings and bringing them in.
Right.
Congratulations again.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis.
Mr. Jordan, congratulations.
Great, I appreciate that.
Councilmember Norwood.
Yes, and I just wanted to say that there's been some discussion about NREM and eminent domain. So it's really important, and I'm delighted that you're willing to accept this responsibility, really important that we are looking at the right structures to go after. Big apartment buildings that have fallen into terrible blight, and not the precious elderly homeowner who has a problem in trying to fix a front porch that might need some repair. So
Sure.
that micromanaging is going to be really important. So we clean up our city in a way that is compassionate, but is also effective, where we've had absentee landlords and people really disregarding our wonderful communities. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Member Lewis, you wish-
And once again, I want to make sure we typically try not to speak at these points, but that is important because Councilmember Norwood and Councilmember Boone and myself were working to hold these large apartment complexes accountable. We have people that are doing things and they've been just making a lot of money. So we need good folk from our
Right.
city, good folk with good intentions who can't wait to come to work. So I appreciate you for taking this initiative.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to our presentations. Our first presentation will be Atlanta Citizen Review Board Quarterly Update. Mr. Samuel Reed, Executive Director.
Good afternoon, committee members. Glad to be here today to give you the third quarter report for the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. The date on that is wrong, so I'll make sure that that's corrected. Trying to get this to advance. Okay. Well, I'll go over the preliminary. Okay. Okay, so starting out, like I always do, the Atlanta Citizen Review Board is an independent investigative agency of the city of Atlanta. We are authorized to investigate Atlanta police and corrections officers, and we do our work fairly, thoroughly, and independently with integrity. We support citizen confidence in policing by having the best officers serving the community. Our goal is to enhance public safety through the promotion of officer accountability. Next slide. We're led by Ms. Dorothy Hurst, who is the chair. She represents MPU M through R, and Tamara Orange is our vice chair representing Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. And our secretary is Ms. Leah Pulliam. She represents Urban League of Greater Atlanta. As for our jurisdictional requirements, citizens have 365 days to file a complaint related to an incident with an Atlanta police or corrections officers. The complaint must be signed, and they can file the complaint anonymously, and it can be filed by phone, website, email, in person, or complaint portal. We also have the authority to self-initiate investigations involving officer-involved deaths or officer-in-custody deaths. As it relates to allegations, we're able to investigate abuse of authority, abusive language, appropriate action required, conduct, discrimination, discriminatory reference, failing to provide identification, false arrest, false imprisonment, harassment, retaliation, use of excessive force that includes death and serious bodily injury, and we're also able to investigate other standard operating procedures not mentioned. So today, for this third quarter report, I want to focus on the Fulton County Sheriff's Office interference with ACRB investigations and our third quarter report data and community outreach engagement. So recently, we received information from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office that they were no longer going to allow ACRB investigators to interview individuals who are in the city jail who are under the custody of the Fulton County Sheriff's Office related to their complaints. Now, for the past 15 years, we've been interviewing citizens who have complaints against police officers, with no issues. So we don't understand why this has occurred. We suspect some reasons why it may have occurred, but the issue is those citizens under the Fulton County custody are not able to have their complaints pursued, and the requirement that the Fulton County Sheriff's has said is that we have to have a court order from a judge or the citizen's attorney must provide permission. As many of you know, most citizens in the jail don't have an attorney, and when they get an attorney, it's usually when they get ready to go to trial, which means that's down the line. We see this as direct opposition to our city's efforts, the ACRB's efforts to hold officers accountable. And we wanted to bring this to you all today because it sets a dangerous path that makes us be in line with some other cities that we don't want to be in line with, you know, like Minneapolis and Chicago, Los Angeles, Memphis. We are trying to address citizens' concerns. So this is something that I hope we can get remedy, which on the next slide, the remedy for this is for Fulton County Sheriff's Office to resume allowing the ACRB investigators to interview citizens held under their custody. And the shocking part about this, these are citizens that's in the city jail that they refuse to let us interview. So right now we have 4 individuals who have filed complaints that we cannot interview to make sure that they even have a complaint, one against either an Atlanta police or corrections officer, not the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. We understand we don't have jurisdiction over them, but they contacted us related to a police officer or a corrections officer for the city of Atlanta. So that's our biggest concern and challenge right now. If we move on to the next slide, we talk about the quarterly report. The ACRB received 51 complaints through January through December, and we assigned 11 complaints to the full investigation. 32 complaints were dismissed, and those complaints were majority complaints that was outside of our jurisdiction involving officers who do not work for the Atlanta Police or Corrections Office Department. We had 8 complaints assigned, that were awaiting a signed complaint. For the quarter, complaints were evenly distributed among the zones. And as I mentioned here on this slide, we do have those 4 complaints from the Corrections Department involving those 4 complaints. That's Fulton County detainees. Council Districts 2, 4, and 11 received 58% of the complaints. We closed 14 investigations. We have 31 complaint investigations open, and the investigation timeline is 206 days. As we move to the next slide, our top 3 allegations were appropriate action required, excessive force, and conduct. During the months of January through March, we did not receive any officer-involved shooting notifications. As it relates to other board meetings, we had 3 board meetings. The complaints were 8 complaints were adjudicated, involving 26 allegations. The board sustain rate for that period was 15%. We had 7 complaints awaiting a hearing, and during the period, we received 4 letters from the APD, and all those letters stated that the investigations were still pending. We'll go forward to the community outreach and engagement. During the quarter, we participated in 113 events and made 75 cold calls. We participated in the Martin Luther King Jr. Youth Conference, the King March, made presentations at the Atlanta Police Department Recruit Training Academy, and we also participated in several forums and got involved in our social media and connected with attendees at an annual local steering committee network regarding the Georgia Department of Community Supervision. Our mobile unit logged 1,808 miles, reaching 163 of communities and retail outlets. As it relates to what's coming up next, as and I'll focus on the youth. We'll be having presentations at Camp Best Friends, Atlanta Fulton County Libraries, and we will be wrapping up the ACRB Educators Fellows Program. As you can see on that slide, that's our new superhero that helps us communicate our message to the youth about police interactions and telling the truth. And our last slide will be our contact information, and I will conclude here unless there are any questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Executive Director Reed, also you've spoken, but I didn't introduce you. We've been joined by Councilmember Norwood. Sorry about that. First up is Councilmember Lewis.
I appreciate the service that you've been doing for the city. I appreciate you keeping this going. I see you everywhere you're supposed to be, making sure that we hold folks accountable. My question to you, with our partners, if a good faith partner, after 15 years, what changed?
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Thank you for that question. We don't know. The board sent a letter to Fulton County Sheriff last week requesting that information and requesting how can we get this, resume these investigations. When the city attorney's office spoke with them, with the attorneys over at the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, it pretty much was, this is just what we decided, so that was it. Now, I don't know. I mean, when we go over to interview these citizens in their custody, we're asking them about their interactions with Atlanta police officers, which is the subject of their complaint. So I don't know. We would like to know that answer.
Because you're not asking anything about Fulton County officers.
No.
Fulton County sheriffs. You're
No.
asking about APD. Another question is, I feel they're taking us, do you feel that the interactions with Fulton County is taking us backwards?
Yes. As it relates to our work, you know, all these little things, little bad decisions creates an atmosphere for when something notable happens, people's frustration boils over. And this action here by the Sheriff's Department, frankly, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And without an understanding as to why the Sheriff's Department felt it was necessary, there's no way to be able to remedy an issue if there was an issue, which I would say there wasn't an issue because we've been doing it for 15 years the same way. The only thing that has changed this time is that we were seeking to interview individuals who are being held in the Atlanta City Jail. That's the only thing that's changed. Before that, we were going over to Fulton County Jail interviewing people. So I don't know why that changed.
That could be, so to make sure, can you, if you wanted to go to the Fulton County Jail right now, could you go?
Well, probably not today after, talking about this here, but 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before we tried to interview the citizens in the city jail, we were over at the Fulton County Jail interviewing a citizen, right? So when we received the letter from the Sheriff's Department saying you can't interview these individuals at the city jail, we were like, wait, what are you talking about? We're just over here at the Fulton County Jail. So it didn't make any sense to us.
And so I didn't know he sent you a letter too?
Yes.
Do you have can you provide a copy of that letter to my office? Or to
Yes.
me? A couple more questions around, to understand that your job is to bring transparency to us. Your job is to tell us what's going on with police interactions, correct?
Correct.
And do you feel that currently you have the best do you feel that the relationship right now is the best transparent as it could be?
there's always room for improvement, and so we strive to make sure we let people know what's happening when it's happening, so that if there's some pivots that need to be made, they can be made. That's why I came to you all today about this issue, because we don't want it to grow into something else, because I mean, I can't read the future, but if the Sheriff's Department continues down this path, that would mean that more citizens are not being able to have their complaints addressed against Atlanta police officers, and that's not what we want to do.
And I'll say that I appreciate you again for coming here. But when you give us a full report, if it's your turn to come give your report, because we hear reports all the time, but when you say your biggest concern, your biggest challenge is your relationship with the county, that's something we can fix, right? Because we are elected officials, you are not.
Right.
Your job is to bring transparency, and that's something that we can try to fix. So it's our job to, because if you can't give me a full report, or if I hear you say, I heard you say this, that you don't know if you'll be able to go back into the sheriff's after this conversation.
Right.
So that means you're talking about retaliation or something.
I don't know. I'm just saying that I do know that the change surprised us.
I'm from Atlanta. Today, this morning, right, somebody sent me a clip of Alley Pat and Hosea Williams. And in that conversation, he said, man, I'm from Atlanta. We're going to say it out loud. That's what I just heard you say. And so I'm appalled that that's where we are. I hope that's not where we are. We're going to move with good faith over here.
Well, I'm hoping that too, but we'll see.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other speakers? Questions for Executive Director Reed? All right. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Next and final presentation is the Police Alternatives and Diversion Quarterly Update. Moki Macias, Executive Director.
Good afternoon. I'm just passing out a report that we thought you might find of interest. And as usual, our monthly reports are on our website at atlantapad.org if you want more details month to month. Good afternoon. Happy to be here today. As you know, I'm Moki Macias, Executive Director for Policing Alternatives and Diversion, more affectionately known as PAD, and I'll be presenting today with our Director of Community Response, China Corker. But before we dive into our third quarter impact, I'd like to provide some context for the state of this important work in Atlanta. Ooh, there's a little bit of a delay here, okay. So in 2017, the City of Atlanta and other stakeholders gave officers another option. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Gave officers another option when they respond. Do I need to tell you? I'm so sorry. If you can go back one slide. Thank you. Okay. Are you going to control the slides? Okay. I apologize. Okay, let me start over. So in 2017, as you all know, the City of Atlanta and other stakeholders gave officers an option other than arrest when they supported PAD to develop pre-arrest diversion here in Atlanta and Fulton County. In 2021, the city decided that public safety would be better served by having alternatives to police response by investing in PAD to launch the first civilian response in the state here in Atlanta. And yet we still have a long way to go. In our community, police response is still the default response for the vast majority of concerns, and arrest continues to be the primary outcome of a police interaction. Because of how these activities are criminalized in our city code, people who urinate outside, ask for food or water, or who are sleeping in a public right-of-way more often find themselves in jail than connected to the basic resources that they need. Next slide, please. But what we know is that the majority of community concerns are actually best suited for civilian response, and the data supports this both across the country and locally. I'd like to read a quote from a report that I shared with y'all, an excerpt that I shared with the committee and will also make available online. But before I do that, I want to say this. You know, what we know is that the vast majority of concerns that are coming into 911 could be handled through a non-crisis civilian response. That may be related to traffic enforcement, or excuse me, traffic accidents. That may be related to a whole host of concerns that may need a response, right, but are not actually an enforcement issue and are not actually a life-threatening emergency. In addition to those calls that could be handled by non-crisis civilian response, there are also calls that can be handled by crisis response that are civilians, right? So that's our mental health crisis calls. In addition, there is the opportunity, which I know the city is exploring, to decide which of those calls might still have a police component, and in that case, invest in a co-response model. So that would be crisis civilian response alongside police response. But in terms of the scope of the kinds of concerns that our community members raise in public meetings, that they raise through calling 911, we know that the vast majority really tracks what we see across the country. So let me go ahead and read this quote to y'all. This is from the Vera Institute report related to the 911 call processing system. Police spend an inordinate amount of time responding to 911 calls for service, even though most of these calls are unrelated to crimes in progress. Many are for quality of life issues like noise, locked driveways, or public intoxication. Others are for problems like drug abuse, homelessness, or mental health crises that would be better resolved with community-based treatment or other resources, not a criminal justice response. There's a pressing need to identify 911 calls that present a true public safety emergency and require an immediate police response, while responding to other calls in ways that do not tax limited policing resources. I want to share an example based out of LA, which again tracks with examples around the country. There was a study over 10 years of 18 million calls for service in the Los Angeles area. The study authors found that fewer than 8% of all calls involved serious crimes. Police spent considerably more of their time and resources responding to traffic incidents and calls categorized as minor disturbances. I think it bears mentioning that in March of this year, the Los Angeles Police Union proposed 28 911 call types where other city agencies or nonprofit organizations would be sent first. Those calls range from mental health situations, quality of life and homeless issues, public intoxication, panhandling, and the like. So, you know, I think it's exciting to see that we are, as a city, exploring additional options for ensuring that these calls can be deflected out of the 911 system. And, you know, here in Atlanta, as we developed the 311 community response, we found similar trends. We reviewed 3.5 years of 911 data, and we found that the majority of calls relate to the kinds of concerns that I've just discussed. So I think that's really important context as the city explores what else you can do to offload some of these calls out of our system. I think it's also just really critical to bear in mind that the majority of these calls do not need a police response at all. And in fact, it is programs like the PAD 311 community response that is meeting the overwhelming need. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about non-crisis civilian response in Atlanta. At this time, we have been operating for just over 2 years, going on 2.5 years in Atlanta through the PAD 311 community response. And you know, I know that I've shared with y'all before, we didn't jump into this from one day to the next. We worked very, very closely with city stakeholders, with service providers, with directly impacted residents over a 6-month process in 2020 to develop the PAD 311 community response program. We used the 911 call data. We used APD arrest data. We surveyed the public and held listening sessions during the height of COVID in order to really develop something that is homegrown, that meets the specific needs of Atlanta. In addition to that, we continue to collaborate with our stakeholders across the board, both through our community leadership team, which provides oversight to our work and to our organization, and through our board of directors and our community engagement program. So it's important for us to just acknowledge that this work doesn't just happen. It happens through an enormous amount of work and collaboration to get to where we are today. Next slide, please. And where we are today, just 2.5 years in, is that PAD's model is nationally recognized. Our work has been featured across the country in national forums and in federal planning efforts. I want to just make sure that y'all have the opportunity to read it. The text is small, but just to call out, that we have worked closely with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, with SAMHSA, the Federal SAMHSA Administration, with the 988 rollout through the federal government, and in forums that have been convened around the country to really look at this issue. How do we address the problem that I started with? How do we address the fact that our public safety system has been designed in an upside down fashion, and we now are in the position of having to sort of invert the burden back to getting people connected to community resources when that is what they actually need. So because of this work that we've been doing over the last couple of years here in Atlanta, we have helped to put Atlanta on the map as part of a national movement to reimagine our public safety response. Next slide, please. And as a part of that, I'd like to just to highlight one area where we're receiving national focus and really bringing the Atlanta experience to a national stage. In just a couple weeks, or is that next week, we'll be in DC. We are on the host committee along with Albuquerque, Dayton, Tucson, Denver, San Francisco, as a practitioner that is pulling together resources and technical assistance for cities and jurisdictions all over the country to learn about how to do this work and how to do it well. This convening is being sponsored by the Georgetown Law Center for Innovations in Community Safety, as well as the NYU Policing Project. Next slide, please. So I've been speaking about our community response work, right? The fact that in the city of Atlanta, somebody can call 311 and our team will show up. Our average response time is less than 30 minutes, and we're able to provide direct support and problem solving on the scene. But that is only one part of our comprehensive approach. Our mission as the PAD initiative is to reduce arrest and incarceration of people experiencing extreme poverty, problematic substance use, or mental health concerns, and to increase the accessibility of supportive services here in Atlanta and Fulton County. So we take a comprehensive approach to reduce arrest and incarceration, right? We don't just do that through community response, but also through engaging in systems change collaboration, in connecting people to direct services, and doing the hard work of community engagement to ensure that people know that there's an option in Atlanta and that they can help us design as we continue to grow this thing. Next slide, please. In terms of the system change collaboration, it has taken enormous time and effort to ensure the success of this work. I want to just mention a few examples of the planning work that PAD consistently engages in to not only make sure that our work is successful, but to really ensure that our broader mission of reducing arrest and incarceration for those people who are struggling on the margins in our community is actually being realized. So to start, we facilitated the development of a multi-party agreement between the county, the district attorney, solicitor general's offices, and City of Atlanta, as well as our agency, in order to authorize pre-arrest diversion here in the City of Atlanta. in 2017. Over the last 4 years, we've been involved in efforts to develop the concept of a 24-hour diversion center. We led that work for the Fulton County Justice and Mental Health Task Force, of which the City of Atlanta was also a part. And now we serve on the core planning team for the Center for Diversion and Services, set to launch in 2024. But we've been doing this work over the last 4 years. We also facilitated the community engagement, the partner development, and the protocol design for the creation of the 311 Supportive Services Delivery Team, which not only was the first 311 in the country to dispatch in-person response to community concerns, but also now connects citizens to resources all throughout our community so that people do not have to call 911 to get connected to peer support. They do not have to call 911 to get connected to support related for mental health or substance use. They can call 311 in our community. Next slide, please. We know that for our response to be effective, we need to have somewhere that is the end of that pathway, right? We know that when our officers in the City of Atlanta go out, they engage somebody, more often than not, that engagement leads to an arrest. That arrest leads to jail, right? When our teams go out and engage a community member who needs support, we need a destination, right? And that's a big part of the work with the diversion center. It's having that destination for individuals in that exact moment. But we also need community resources. We need an infrastructure that can support people with housing, food, transportation, basic income, healthcare, recovery support, right? And we have invested tirelessly to bring resources into our community in order to better serve our community. I want to mention a few. One is that we developed a $4 million multi-agency partnership with the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health to expand access to the underutilized Georgia Housing Voucher. This is for folks who are experiencing homelessness, they're experiencing a mental health concern that is severe, and they're experiencing criminalization. Because of our efforts, and my colleague China will speak to it, we have been able to house a number of people that would never have been housed without wraparound support to get from the jailhouse door to their own apartment with wraparound services. And we've done that in partnership with Partners for Home, with the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health, and with Grady Hospital. We also have partnered with Fulton Department of Behavioral Health and community-based housing providers to attract over $600,000 in federal grants to provide care navigation and recovery housing for people who are struggling with substance use disorders. Those are funds that we have been able to administer to our community-based housing providers in partnership with the Fulton Department of Behavioral Health. We've also raised over $5 million in non-city funds over the last 5 years just for direct services for our community's most vulnerable residents. That means people are getting housing. That means people are getting transportation assistance. That means people are getting intensive case management and support in order to stabilize their own lives based on their own vision of health and wellness, right? So we are not only talking about the gaps that we see when we go out every day, when we're engaging with somebody who may be suffering, we are actively contributing to building the system that we need here in Atlanta as a part of our comprehensive strategy led by PAD. Next slide, please. A big part of this work is ensuring that our community members understand the challenges that we face and what we can do together if we decide to do something different. So it's not just in the planning of our services that we engage the community deeply, but it's also critical to our everyday work. That means the times that we show up to town halls and have those conversations with your constituents. That means the street outreach that we do with businesses. We engaged 453 businesses in person this quarter alone to let them know, hey, listen, next time you have a concern where somebody might be upset, they're standing outside of your business, they're yelling, they look scared or cold or hungry, you don't have to call 911. Try 311 first. And when we go to NPU meetings and we talk with people about their concerns, we're glad to see that more often than not, APD is standing up there first saying, hey, listen, if it's a quality of life concern, call 311 for PAD first. So we're glad to see that messaging getting out, and we're glad to see that the Atlanta Police Department recognizes the value of the contribution that we're bringing to this city. I'd like to also mention, just up at the top there, in January, we were able to welcome President Blake of Georgia State, as well as his leadership team, to our office to be able to talk more about what our policing alternatives and diversion work could be in partnership with Georgia State. So we're in those conversations now. We are about to train all of the Georgia State police officers to be able to make diversions, and we're really looking forward to how, if we work more intentionally together in the downtown space, we can continue to make a really big impact for our city. Next slide, please. So based on the work that we have done over the last several years and the conversations that we are in with our peers all over the country, we recognize that there are common challenges that civilian response efforts face. This is not exclusive to Atlanta. Not only do we recognize them, but we are actively seeking solutions, right? We recognize that when civilian responders show up and engage somebody, we're not bringing folks to jail, right? So what that means is that there is a gap. There is a lack of housing, and there's a lack of safe places for people to take care of their basic needs. That's a huge part of why we've been working so hard on the Diversion Center. That's going to provide a 24-hour alternative to jail starting in 2024. But we also do a lot of work around housing. We do a lot of work connecting people back to family members or community supports so that people do have a safer place to be, right? We also recognize there's a lack of recovery resources. We work closely with our partners at Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, and we are working on additional partnerships with some statewide partners to really lift up the need for recovery resources in our community. And we recognize that there's a lack of community awareness. One item that I'd like to highlight, in addition to all of our wonderful community engagement work, but it's that we know that, from pre-K, people are taught, see something, say something, call 911. There's a lot of work to be done to help people understand that there may be many situations where they can call 311 instead. That said, we have the opportunity to deflect the 911 calls straight over to the 311 system for PAD dispatch by partnering with 911 and 311. We're already doing that for public indecency calls. In August, we are slated to launch that for panhandling calls. And I think that's a real opportunity for us to keep offloading those calls that really would be better served by civilian first response. I am going to pass this off now to my colleague, China, to talk you through the quarter impact.
As she mentioned, my name is China Corker. I'm the Director of Community Response Services with PAD. You can go to the next slide. So what this chart shows is the current trend in arrests versus the actual amount of pre-arrest diversions coming to PAD. So Zone 5, we are seeing the most PAD diversions was 23, however, 434 eligible arrests during PAD's hours of operation, which are just opportunities that we could be actually diverting folks. Again, in Zone 1 and Zone 2, we're seeing the colors are a little low, but we're seeing more arrests happening in those zones than there are diversions. And so as Moki mentioned, we know that this is yes, about underutilization, but also about opportunity. So as we are taking more calls from E911 and redirecting some of those calls that are going into our 911 system, it'll give us more opportunities to respond to some of these concerns, but there are a number of arrests happening between the hours of 7 to 7 for eligible charges that we are currently diverting for, that we could be taking on as an organization. Next. So in the first quarter of the year, we were able to complete 48 pre-arrest diversion services. Overwhelmingly, what we're seeing these diversions for are criminal trespassing, panhandling, shoplifting, possession of drug-related articles or drugs themselves, as well as law violations related to substance misuse or public disorderly conduct or public indecency. Next slide. So what this chart shows us is our current PAD response by district. And so the breakdown shows both 311 call requests as well as diversions that are happening in each district. So in districts 6 and 5 and 2, we are seeing the most PAD requests and the most diversions, whereas in districts 10, 11, and 12, we are seeing not as many as we could be getting through our community engagement efforts and consistent PAD presence in those communities. We're hoping that these numbers can go up in the next quarter. In the first quarter, we completed 280 community referrals through ATL 311. We were able to respond within 22 minutes, which is well under our target time of 30 minutes. 202 of those referrals were designated as needing an immediate response, with our teams immediately dispatched to be able to support whatever the community concern was. Overwhelmingly, what we're seeing are concerns related to basic needs and concerns related to mental health challenges in the community that are both causing a disturbance or may be resulting in public indecency or a need for welfare concerns. So what we're hoping is that we continue to be able to support people who are experiencing these concerns, but also get more calls in all of the zones. So just to talk a little bit about our direct services for the first quarter, currently we have 626 people currently enrolled in PAD Care Navigation, 63 of which were enrolled in this quarter. We provide weekly case management to 417 active participants. Of our current active participants, 92% were not arrested by APD in the 6 months following their diversion, and we had 11 people rediverted into PAD by APD. I want to quickly talk about the services we provide. I know Moki mentioned that we are, reconnecting people to their families, that we are buying Greyhound tickets and giving MARTA cards to folks to be able to reconnect if they find themselves in Atlanta. But what we are also doing is taking care of those basic needs, providing food, providing shelter options, getting them connected to substance use care with our partner agencies, getting them connected to mental health support, and really going out and being able to provide wraparound care in the community. Next slide. So this is just talking very quickly about our housing support. So just in the year so far, we've been able to connect 19 people to their permanent apartment. These are people who were previously experiencing homelessness, who may have never thought that they would be able to have their own apartment in their name, and now here we are, 19 people we've been able to connect. We've been able to get 43 people into emergency housing, 24 people placed in substance use housing, as well as 18 people currently in bridge housing, which means they are on their way to get their apartment and are just waiting now for the final touches to be added. I want to tell the story very quickly about Robert Mitchell, who is our participant to the left. And he has just an incredible story, and it's a story that I think people may not know about many of the folks that they are seeing out in the community. Robert was a nurse, and his wife was a school teacher. And when she passed, he found himself in a disarray and just unable to really meet his basic needs and continue to take care of himself. And so he found himself unhoused, unsheltered, and sleeping actually in an abandoned house. At that point was when he was approached by law enforcement and diverted into PAD. And since then, now here he is, moved into his apartment and is back on his feet, working and really being able to kind of live the life that he wanted to live after suffering a major tragedy. And so we tell this story, just to highlight that this is an experience that is not unique. Many of our unsheltered folks that we consistently engage or that you all consistently get calls about are folks who just need support. And PAD is able to be that support for them, either through our care navigation or through our direct contact through ATL 311 community response. That is all, and we can take questions.
With that, colleagues, if you have any questions, please indicate with your screen. First to Councilmember Lewis.
I want to say thank you for your service and just know the work that you are doing. I think when I see 8 calls in pad, I wonder, am I the person who made the 8 calls? Because I've seen the 22-minute response time. Sometimes I've seen it at 12 minutes. I've seen you come to a Grady Memorial Hospital when I was there because we needed folks there within 12 minutes. So I appreciate the services I can't wait to see them expanded. I got to do a better job of saying 311, not 911. I'm just trying to think of ways in which we can get the word out more. Because the things that you just said we can use 311 for, use you for, we need to get the word out more. What would you suggest we could do from this side to make life, to flood you with work? You get what I'm saying? Like, I just saw a woman walking back into City Hall today. I left from lunch with my wife. I saw a woman with no clothes on, no bottom pants on. Her shirt kind of came over her bottom just a little, so you wouldn't call the police if you ain't really looking, or you wouldn't call PAD if you ain't really looking. But I'm telling you that somebody's probably gonna call the police on her because she was walking past the courthouse, and I just know how fast that can happen. And I was just thinking to my mind, how can we get PAD here for this situation? So what would you suggest we could do for that situation?
I think that's a great opportunity to call PAD. We do respond to concerns related to public indecency.
Not just for that in particular. Just like to get the word out more. What do you think I could do to get the word out more so that when my auntie, Aunt Susie, sees someone, she don't call the police, she calls PAD. What do you think I could do to do that?
Yeah, I think it would be 2 things. The first I would say is just continuing to saturate your district with PAD, whether it be asking us to deliver some what are they called? Our little cards, being able to distribute that out, being able to have our teams come out into your district and drop off flyers inside of businesses, but also how you engage the community. So when concerns are coming to your office, when your emails or your phones are being flooded with concerns that are related to quality of life, that would be a good opportunity to just redirect folks to calling ATL 311.
So how do you think, because when I see Zone 3, 262 eligible arrests during PAD hours and 2 diversions, right? And that's number 4. That's why I'm happy, because we've risen to number 4. But to only have 2, what do you think we could do as a public safety committee board member? What do you think I could do more? Because I know I've been yelling PAD. What do you think we could do more to improve those numbers?
Yeah, I think I'll defer to Moki on that one.
Thank you for calling us and for asking people to call us. It means a lot. So just in terms of the Atlanta Police Department diversions, I will say that we have started meeting regularly with Peter Amon over at APD to discuss ways to ensure that at the zone level, those diversions are really being made, that we're converting the arrests to diversions. So we are having bi-weekly meetings to discuss what we can do to support the Atlanta Police Department to kind of get that word out, that's sort of the expectation of officers. I think continuing up for this body, continuing to work with the police department to ensure that that is happening, that folks are reporting out on the number of diversions being made and reporting out on the number of attempted diversions. We also want to make sure that we are getting traction on identifying what more granular detail about the missed opportunities. What I'd love to see is that zone by zone, that we're sitting down with the majors on a monthly basis and saying, we're gonna go through the arrests that have been made, and let's talk about, which ones could have been diversions, and how can we support you at the zone level to make sure that officers are going ahead and making those choices.
I heard your suggestion, but I want to enter in this other portion. Sometimes the arrests it could be a PAD diversion at first, but while there, it may turn into a different situation. And so I do want to understand that could happen while there, while officers are there, which is why they probably did not call PAD.
Sure, and we recognize that this is officer discretion when calls are coming through 911 or when an officer is directly engaging with somebody and detaining them. So, you know, that's why it's so important to have an option that is before the police interaction, right? So that it preserves police resources and that you don't have situations that then, you know, somebody's upset, they get more agitated, it becomes a situation where then the officer is unwilling to divert, right? So I think continuing to make sure that we're deflecting, as many calls as we can out of 911 and investing in the ability to do that, I think will also help us ensure that not only that community members become aware, hey, I just called 911 for this, but I can actually call 311, and that when those calls are being made, we actually appropriately deflect the call to the more appropriate response through 311.
I appreciate you even for that response, because I like that response when you take that out. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Councilmember Boone, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this report. We have a homeless couple living in the back of a neighborhood on Boulder Park Drive. The property is vacant, but it's owned by an individual that is in a convalescent home. What can be done in that situation?
It might be something that we should reach out to your office directly on, and we can kind of problem solve with you. Our service is basically available in the public space. So our teams won't go into a home, but we are able to engage people that may be, you know, on the front porch or around the home to be able to offer support. So I would encourage you to reach out to our office. You know, when you have a sticky situation that you might wonder kind of what the right route is, please reach out to us directly, and we're happy to talk it through with you before we decide how we dispatch a team.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for PAD? All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you so much for allowing us the time. I do want to acknowledge that our renewal, our third option renewal, I believe is on your agenda today. So we'll be here if you have questions as it comes up. Thank you.
We've also been joined by Councilmember Keisha Shawn Waits. Welcome. And we have also been joined by Sheriff Labat. Want to address what we heard during the PAD presentation, or not PAD presentation, excuse me, ACRB presentation. And then if any of my colleagues have any questions for you.
Yeah, I think that's more appropriate. And first of all, thank you all for what you all do, continue to do to serve our city. I did hear some misnomers, and I wanted to see if you all had any opportunities for me to correct what has been given to you all out of habit. You know, I'm long 30 years in public safety in the city of Atlanta, so I still watch you all at 1 o'clock on Mondays. So if you all have any questions of the sheriff's office, we certainly want to answer those questions. The assertion that we are stopping people from talking to the Civilian Review Board, we have asked them to contact the individuals that represent them, because those individuals are arrested and have rights. And so what we don't want to do is interfere with that. And because anything that is said can be held against them, and if they have attorneys, we ask, like everybody else, contact the attorney first, and then we will make sure we help facilitate in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And just like you, the Civilian Review Board has access to me at any and all times. So if you all have any questions, please, I'd like to know what they may be.
All right, thank you, Sheriff Labat. First with questions is Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you, Sheriff Labat, for coming over. I think anytime we've had a discussion about you and you've come over every time, third time I think you've come. I appreciate that. Today in the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, the presentation, the first thing that they talked about, and what I noticed was what was stated was the biggest concern and challenge is the relationship with the county, the sheriff's office, and the complaint was on the way that they actually meet folks. So my question, just about process, how did the process used to work, and how does it work now?
First of all, the process and the Civilian Review Board is specific to the city of Atlanta, not the sheriff's office. They don't have any oversight at the sheriff's office. Shouldn't have had oversight at the time over corrections, because they had an outstanding leader at the time, and communication and being transparent is where we are. That leader has since moved on and carried that transparency in the same spaces in terms of incarceration and what that looks like. So it's simply that, one, the assertion that I sent you a letter. No, I saw the letter on social media. I don't operate like that. You call me anytime you want to, don't you? Right? Yeah, no, I'm just telling you how I got the letter originally via social media. There's a letter that the Civilian Review Board sent to the sheriff's office. And so to that extent, I've not seen the handheld, the actual letter saying that there was an issue. And so just as you call me and as anybody else call me, anybody can call me to say, look, we have an issue, and how do we go about solving it? That's our goal. And so the attorneys at the county's office asserted that anyone that has representation, public defender or otherwise, before they talk to anyone else about their case, they should have that conversation, at least giving the attorney an opportunity to opine on whether this person should be in that have that conversation about whatever it may be.
But this is a change from the relationship that we've previously had for 15 years.
No. This is an opportunity for us to enhance what we're doing. And so the only difference is we are holding people at ACDC. And so while we have in turn, this is literally just us moving in a different direction of saying lawyers have complained that individuals have come to talk to my client and I have not been notified. And so not to impede any conversation, we want to make sure that everybody has been involved in the conversation, especially if you have an attorney.
So for the past 15 years, the relationship...
That doesn't mean we're doing it right. I'm sorry, Mr. Councilman.
But the relationship that was presented to us about the past 15 years, I think was a relationship that the Citizen Review Board enjoyed. It was a relationship that we shared with the county. And as we're building even more relationships with the city and the county, at least with the lease of ACDC now, looking like we're meeting and we're working together on a lot of different things. Our board has been the Atlanta Citizen Review Board to bring transparency to us, to this committee, which is why they bring this report to us quarterly. His biggest concern and challenge this year is his relationship with the sheriff's office. And when he said that, he also, I'm listening to him, I said, well, what changed? And he said, well, we have people in the Atlanta jail. That's the ACDC, the Atlanta Detention Center, that we wanted 4 individuals that we tried to come by and see. And we received a letter from the sheriff's office that said we can't. And I said, well, how many times you received this? He said, never. In the 15 years, if we want to see somebody, we reach out, they say, come on, go to a room, and it's so smooth and so easy. That's why that relationship has been so good. And so he said that there's a change now, and I want to know if we can go back to that good part.
Well, and I appreciate that, but prior to you getting elected, while I was in office at the city of Atlanta and the Civilian Review Board was established, those relationships were city relationships. Since then, there is something that has gone awry. And as we do, the nice attorneys get involved and they say X, Y, and Z, this is what has happened. And so in order to talk to those good folks, right, that you mentioned, and to continue, we want to make sure the people that represent our clients have had an opportunity to at least okay it. And that's all that says, is quite simply, and again, this is the best part about that. Before we start texting, getting on social media, et cetera, just like you, everybody knows they can reach out to me. And we solve problems, that's what we do. And so again, it shouldn't have happened the first time, the second, third, or fourth time without us fixing the problem ahead of time. And then to your point, at least letting you all know what the process is from that perspective. And it would have come directly to you all instead of the Civilian Review Board.
I think my last question is, if we can get back to that smooth relationship where we make the call over that, because where we make that call over to the sheriff's office or whoever we're supposed to. And I would like for the ACRB to tell me at least what the process looked like, because I'm confused, because I was told it was like we make a call, then they told us we go to a room, we sit down with the person, and then it goes from there. And so I want to know if we can get back to that process, or if that wasn't the process, can you tell me if I'm confused there?
Lee Reed, Executive Director, Land Citizen Review Board. No, you're correct. It either is a call or an email to the designated person over at Fulton County Jail, if the person's in the Fulton County Jail, or the Atlanta Corrections Department facility. And then they go through the process, and the investigator is able to go over and interview the citizen. It was seamless. There wasn't any issue with it. Okay, so the citizen has the right to file a complaint, regardless of whether the attorney wants them to or not. That's what they get to do, right? So when a citizen files a complaint, we are duty bound to pursue that complaint, right? This saying that you need permission of the attorney, or like I said earlier, citizen may not have an attorney, right? And I misspoke when I said a letter. There was conversations with our investigator who received information from the Fulton County Sheriff's Attorney. I can't, 1 second. Heard from the Fulton County Sheriff's Attorney, who, I just want to bring this up real quick.
I think that's why I was concerned, because like, they sent the letter, that's on paper, black and white. That's a little different. So it's not in paper, black and white. Nothing has changed about the relationship on paper.
I don't know if there was anything on paper. This was a process, our practice.
Gotcha.
Now, this is what was said. Just 1 second here. Damn it. All right, I'm gonna find it. But anyway, resuming the process of our investigators being able to contact the investigator, let me stop looking at that. Resuming the process of our investigators being able to contact the jail, whether they be in Fulton County or the city's correction department, and being able to do those investigations of interviewing the citizen who's in jail, is the best way for us to be able to move forward without having any encumbrances, right? Citizens want their complaints addressed quickly. They want to be able to have their statements taken, so that if there was misconduct, it can be addressed. This extra layer of going to the court to get an order, or talking to their attorney about it, when it's the citizen's complaint, it's not the attorney's complaint, it's the citizen's complaint. It makes no sense.
This is also has been the process for 15 years.
Yes, 15 years. And like I said, up until we got this letter, my investigator emailed me April 11th, talking about why this change. So the last 2 years, even under Sheriff Labat, we were still doing those investigations. When Sheriff Jackson was there, we've been doing those investigations with no issues. And if somebody's been complaining, I would like for them to say, if they were complaining about us, let me know so we can get it corrected. I didn't see or hear, or even what he said here, that there's an issue with my investigators doing something, right? So I don't understand why the change.
I appreciate your service to serve on this board as well, but Sheriff Labat, that's what I was hoping to get back to, the seamless process that we've enjoyed before I got elected, before you got elected, that's been going, that makes him feel comfortable, makes our Atlanta Citizens Review Board as a whole feel comfortable, and makes me as a council member feel comfortable when I know that that access is in there, and me and my 55,000 people in my area feel comfortable. I'm open for that. I want to know if we can get back to that process.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that because the county attorney has opined and said, right, that these individuals that are in custody, right, have certain rights. And we need to make sure that is absolutely, we adhere to that. Now, it takes a day maybe to get a court order, or it takes less time to have a conversation that says, how do we facilitate this? And just like you call me, he can call me, his investigators can call me. We have individuals that do nothing but provide service in those spaces. So if there is something, and before anything else, we want to make sure that the investigations are completed, et cetera. And so tell you what we'll do, see if this works. We'll take the 4 complaints, identify what the problem was, and we will have somebody get that back to you in writing.
Mr. Labat, I don't, that'll be you.
I'm sorry, Councilman.
Sheriff Labat. I said Mr. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I thought I could say Mr. as well.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
If I can't call you Mr. Labat, let me know.
No, I didn't say that. I just said I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Councilmember, I appreciate you.
You can call me Mr. Lewis. They call me Antonio too. I apologize, Mom. But Sheriff Labat, when my question is, if I know we can't, you said we can't get back there. So the attorneys came and they said, hey, after 15 years, this is the first time some attorneys have said that?
Again, I can only respond to those 4 individual cases. So I will find out what the inference is and what the problem is, and we will get to you in writing. I will get you the answers that you deserve, right?
And I say that also at the same time when we talk about citizens reviewing issues going on with folks in the jail. We just had a man got eaten alive with bed bugs. And so right now, we don't feel like people are looking for any kind of transparency you can give us. They want all doors open. And so to see this, I want to call I want to be official with his title as well whenever I say his name, but to see him come in and say my biggest challenge and concern is with our partnership with the Sheriff's Office, and to say, hey, what changed? Say, this is the first change.
Here is the problem, Councilman Lewis, is after 15 years, he knows he can call me directly. He has not called, he's not emailed me to say, I have a problem. That is the first layer of communication. We enjoyed a good relationship after a rocky start at the city of Atlanta for 15 years. And so nothing has changed in that space. I owe you and your 50,000 residents an opportunity to at least give you the facts on each one of those cases so that you can make a qualified decision and have those conversations. And no one's more transparent than me. So what has allegedly happened, or otherwise, we need to make sure we get you the facts.
That's why we got that independent board. So we like sending that board in to go and actually come and give us a report like this that tells us, because on TV, we listen to Morris Diggs, somebody just got eaten alive. Ain't nobody know what was going on.
First, let me apologize.
Yep.
Not the facts about the cases that he's seeking, the facts about why he was not allowed in on each individual case. And if there was a complaint associated with each, he deserves that complaint, right? And so do you. So I'm not talking about the individual case. I'm not talking about stalling out any individual cases. I'm simply saying, let me get you the information to make sure we have an entire picture.
And the reason why I'm more on this is because right now, the case in time, what we're dealing with right now, I think we only had one comment to damn public safety, and it was about the jail, literally. And he talked about bed bugs eating somebody alive and bed bugs still going in there, so they had to counsel a court case. Do you know anything about that?
Hey, somebody have to give me some more information.
That's what, that was the only public comment we had to Dan. And then the first thing that a respected Atlanta Citizen Review Board, first thing they say, the first statement, it says, the biggest concern we have is our relationship with the Sheriff's Department. That's why I'm hoping, to me, what I told him, we can fix that.
I agree.
And that's why that's why when I say, hey, can we get back to that smooth relationship? And when you say you don't know, I'm like, so my next question is, it just because of these 4 people, if he was to ask for a random, my cousin who's locked up, if he was to ask to go and see my cousin who's locked up, who's not a part of them 4 folks, or just random 4 or 5 people
I think here's where we're getting confused. They don't have the authority to randomly go in and start questioning people. They have to receive a complaint. And what I am suggesting to you is that I get you the facts. If person A, B, and C filed a complaint, I want them to have access to him immediately, right? And do not want to impede that. But what has been presented to us is that there is a problem of a person that potentially could damage their case. And if there's an opportunity, public defender or otherwise, to be included in the conversation, I'm not even saying beyond that, they can't talk to them. At least give them an opportunity to say whether the attorney advises that or not.
And that's
in
totally
terms of damaging their case.
That's totally different from what you just said. These are 4 one-offs.
Right, and I want to make
This
sure.
is not the new standard. The standard is what it's always been, but these 4 individuals are one-offs.
The standard is complete transparency, has been for day one. And we want to make sure that he has access, his investigators have access, whatever that looks like. All right, and we want to make sure there are no impediments to that. Simultaneously, if there are these one-offs that present a problem, and we need to address it regardless of whether we've been doing it 15 or 30 years, if there's a problem that is unforeseen, that is now risen to the level that we got attorneys involved, and we need to figure it out, I want to solve that too.
And I want to say, Sheriff Labat, I appreciate wholeheartedly how hard you work. When I say you answer the phone at 1 a.m. in the morning for me, you answer the phone for us every single time. You did come right over here and respond to this. My hope, and you just confirmed it, that the process is still the process, but these 4 folks, these are 4 one-offs. And after that, the process is still the process.
I want to make sure he has unfettered access, all right? But we need to make sure we do it properly.
Yes, sir. I want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Waits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't belabor the point. Sheriff, I want to thank you for coming over again. As you've indicated, we have always enjoyed a relationship where we can speak on anything. And so I recognize the complexity of the situation as well as your willingness to collaborate. I appreciate that. So it's my understanding, and I'm new to city government, that the ACRB board was established to allow regular citizens to be able to take place and have conversations regarding concerns they may have had with police officers. And so to my colleague's point, we simply want to ensure that the process is streamlined for individuals who may have some cases that may have merit. And the example that I was given is that currently the sheriff's office or the sheriff's department currently allows police and DAs to speak to persons in custody without it being cleared through their attorneys. And so we want to make sure that that same privilege, if you will, is afforded to the other side of individuals who may have some concerns with activity or things that they may feel may not necessarily be above board. I'm also aware of the challenges that you've had with the facilities and the need to have measures in terms of compliance, so I understand that. But again, I think what we're simply asking for from you today is to open that process up to ensure for those individuals who have very serious complaints that they have access to the other side in terms of the Citizen Review Board, our investigators, to speak to them, to get information, and we don't want that process to be delayed or denied due to the desire to maintain safety protocols and so forth that I believe that you desire to put in the jail. So, you know, we're very clear. Several months ago, we made a decision to turn the facility over to Fulton County. I didn't support that, but nonetheless, we have done that. And I would just like to, given the relationship that we have, is to ensure that the process is streamlined, that there is no delays, that individuals who are in there truly have access to this particular Citizen Review Board, because everyone doesn't have access to attorneys and and cell phone numbers and so forth. And so we want to make sure that in terms of the issue of transparency, that we're sending a message to the public that we're sincere in our desire to make sure that these cases are properly investigated and or vetted.
And thank you, Councilmember Waits. I do want to provide some clarity. You mentioned the DAs. You mentioned the DA and the DA investigators, et cetera. They do talk to individuals pursuant to a court order. So there's no one just walks into the jail because they want to investigate. It's pursuant to a court order. So we need to make sure that we're consistent across the board as well. So I just wanted to make sure, and we certainly appreciate that. We'll again, in the spirit of transparency, making sure that the individuals have access to the Civilian Review Board, we absolutely can make sure we do that as well.
All done, Councilmember Waits?
Yes, sir.
All right, next up is Councilmember Boone.
Thank you, Sheriff, for being here today. And you also, I want to echo what my colleagues said, whether it's small or large, you have always been accessible to us, and we do appreciate that. I have one question. Ms. Floyd called me and stated that her nephew had been arrested for tenant windows and an outstanding warrant. Once she received all of the information, she did hire an attorney and then found out that something called gang was at the bottom of his ticket. Who should she file that complaint with?
That would be Madam DA. So that would be the DA's office, who probably had some additional, depends on who made the arrest. It could originate from the actual arresting agency, in this case probably Atlanta, or there was some additional evidence presented and the DA or the assistant DA made a decision to add the gang piece.
So that should go to?
Either Madam DA's office, Fonnie Willis, or I would certainly ask Chief Sherbaum to see if it was added at either the investigatory level or the detective level.
Again, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sheriff Labat? Yes. Councilmember Lewis.
And Sheriff Labat, I want to be specific to I want to be specific to the complaints, the issues that were made, because I think we talked about everything except the specific issues. Just for him to name, that one of the slides is called Fulton County Sheriff's Office Interference. And have you had a chance to see this?
I have not.
So that's
wow. I'd love to see
So
it.
I wanted you to know, why
appreciate
wouldn't
it.
I want you to, because this is a, they said Antonio Lewis interference on y'all, man, you don't have me down there so fast, it's crazy. So my question is specific to the question that they're asking, because they are the board that we trust, and not coming from him, not coming from one person, coming from a board. They typed this up and put this together. So they had to really vet this out to come present this to the city council. And so the first question is denial of ACRB investigators access to citizens of Fulton County Sheriff's Office custody housed in Atlanta City Jail. And you said those are just for those 4 people, so you've answered that one?
Well, those are for what I was told today for those 4 individuals. I don't know. Again, I came over because when people start using the sheriff's office and me specifically as cannon fodder, I want to make sure, because I have not seen this. But here's what I would have suggested. Had I seen this, we probably wouldn't be standing here today. And I think that's fair to everybody.
I won't even, I appreciate you.
Give me a moment, if you will, to digest this. And if nothing else, we will make sure you all get a direct answer to each one of these.
And they put a remedy on there. And the remedy was that we go to that. But yeah, please, if you get a chance, take a look at it. I appreciate you again for coming over.
I appreciate it.
And I think sometimes what people think, they think is directly to Sheriff Labat. But Sheriff Labat has 2,000, 4,000 employees over there. And so you haven't even seen this.
I wish I had 4,000 employees. I really do. I appreciate it.
We're going to staff you up. We need to staff up.
We'll get that together.
Because what I mean by that is the denial of the issue, you don't even know about it. So what I mean, it ain't reached you yet.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Councilmember
you.
Boone,
I'm sorry.
I'm back up to speak. Good? All right.
Thank you.
Sheriff.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
All right, moving on to our agenda, or consent agenda. First, take claims with favorable and unfavorable recommendations. I'll make a motion to accept all the favorable claims, items 1 through 5. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are favorable. I'll now make a motion to accept all unfavorable claims, items 6 through 21. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote.
Lewis, yes.
Vote is closed.
It's showing 5 on my computer, but 6 yeas, 0 nays. Items are adverse. Moving on to our regular agenda, ordinances for first reading. We have one item, 23-0-1284.
An ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise contract renewal option number 3 with Image Trend Incorporated for EAS 1200427 Record Management Systems on behalf of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department, that the term of renewal number 3 will be effective for 1 year from June 9th, 2023 to June 7th, 2024, in an amount not to exceed $271,086.75 for the purpose of providing a records management system to waive the competitive source selection requirements contained in Section 2-1192 of Article 10 of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances and for the purposes.
Thank you. We'll take that up at the next meeting. Moving on for ordinances for second reading, 23-0-1256.
An ordinance by Councilmember Dustin Hillis to amend Chapter 98, Law Enforcement, Article 2, Department of Police, Division 2, Promotion Policy, and Chapter 114, Personnel, Division 7, Examinations, Subdivision 2, Police, Fire, Corrections, and Promotions of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to provide that the prior service of former members of the Atlanta Police Department and former law enforcement officers of the United States or any of the several states who joined the Atlanta Police Department may count towards their eligibility to compete for the rank of police sergeant, to request that the chief of police in his discretion consider making adjustments to the qualifications for eligibility for appointment to the discretionary ranks of senior police officer and investigator in a manner similar to the amendments to the city code applicable to the eligibility to compete for the rank of sergeant contained herein and for the purposes.
Motion to hold. Is there a second? Second. Second by Vice Chair Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
Yeas, 0 nays. It'll be held. Item number 3, 23-0-1267.
An ordinance by Councilmember Amir Faroki authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the third renewal option for the Memorandum of Understanding with the Atlanta Fulton County Pre-Arrest Diversion Initiative Incorporated, doing business as the Policing Alternatives and Diversion Initiative Incorporated, with a term commencing July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024 by utilizing remaining FY23 funds received by the city from the U.S. Department of Treasury under the American Rescue Plan Act and for the purposes.
Thank you. I do have a question about this, either for PAD or Law. I believe this is the third renewal option, which that was the initial authorization. So just wanted to confirm that, and then what the plan is after that third renewal has expired. Get there.
That, Chair?
Whoever knows the answer.
I'm happy to, Ms. Robinson, if you want me to.
Good afternoon, Amber A. Robinson, City of Atlanta Department of Law. Pursuant to this ordinance, this would authorize the third option to renew with a term commencing July 1 of this year and running through June 30th of next year.
Okay. But the specific question is, since this is the third renewal, is there a plan yet? Maybe you know.
Sure. So yeah, thank you for that. This is our third renewal, and then if the city wanted to contract with PAD to continue providing community response, we would need to negotiate a new contract. I'd also like to mention, if I could, that currently what is in the ordinance is a $2 million allocation, which would be coming from the FY23 funds that were allocated. What we have calculated will be the full cost of providing community response services is actually $2.555. And so we would be looking for some additional dollars in the FY24 budget so that we don't have to raise private dollars to provide the service.
Any questions? Councilmember Lewis?
Yeah, my first question is, does this get you, without the 550, you said 5.5, without that funding, how are you? I mean, do you survive without that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So PAD has consistently raised other dollars, non-city dollars, in order to do our work. This year, what we proposed in this MOU will be that the funds that come from the City of Atlanta will directly support our community responders, our referral coordinators, and the ability to provide that in-person response to both law enforcement and to community members through 311. What we have actually pulled out of that budget is our care navigation and direct services work, because we are raising that separately from both federal, county, and state, as well as private dollars. So what we have done consistently and what we intend to continue to do is to leverage any public dollars that we receive from the City of Atlanta to be able to pull in millions of dollars from other sources to be able to provide our work.
No, I appreciate that because I like when we set an amount that the city wants to give a person, an organization, I like when you go and find the rest of the money. And so I appreciate y'all for setting this $2 million up in the budget for this year. And I want to see if I can add my name to this paper as well.
Get there in just a minute, Councilmember Waits. Okay. Would you like to make that motion? All right. Second. Okay. Motion to add Councilmember Waits and Councilmember Lewis. Anyone else?
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
Ayes, 0 nays. Item is amended. I'll now make a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Item is favorable. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Item number 4, 23-0-1268.
An ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos to allocate $800,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the Safe and Secure Housing Program to increase capacity for the Office of the Solicitor to enforce the 1987 Housing Code and other laws to improve housing conditions for residents living in nuisance and substandard multifamily properties, to transfer funding from the Housing Trust Fund to the Solicitor's Office to effectuate this action and for the purposes.
Councilmember Amos, would you like to speak to this or make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second by, was that Councilmember Waits? Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
Ayes, 0 nays. The item is favorable. Item number 5, 23-0.
Mr. Chair, this item will also be forwarded to FEC.
Item number 5, 23-0-1269.
An ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos to amend Chapter 10, Article 2, Section 10-94A of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances so as to provide an exemption from the distance requirements listed in Section 10-88 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for one convention center selling alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises located at 230 17th Street, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia, and for other purposes.
Councilmember Amos. Motion approved by Councilmember Amos, second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Item is favorable. And if you would, can you please read items 6 and 7 in together? I want to hold those for 2 weeks' time certain. So.
A resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis requesting that the Chief of Police utilize his authority and discretion to formulate and implement rules and regulations for the operations of the Department of Police and promulgate a written departmental standard operating procedure which would establish a pay adjustment for sworn members of the department during the time the member is serving in capacity of increased qualification and responsibility as a field training officer and for other purposes. Item number 7, a resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis requesting that the Commissioner of Human Resources provide the application of a shift differential special pay rule for members of the Atlanta Police Department working evening watch or morning watch at a rate of an additional $1 per hour for evening watch and $1.50 per hour for morning watch and for the purposes.
Thank you for that. So I said 2 weeks, but we have an off week, so I guess it's technically 3 weeks time certain. But I'll make a motion to hold those for those 3 weeks. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Those 2 items will be held. Item number 8, which we have a substitute for that changes the caption. So I'll make a motion to bring forth that substitute, 23R 3615. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is now before us.
A resolution by Council Members Keisha Sean Waits as substituted by the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, a resolution requesting that residential landlords in the City of Atlanta provide written disclosure to their tenants and potential tenants regarding the presence or absence of an active sprinkler system to request that the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department maintain a listing of the residential properties regarding which the City of Atlanta has issued a citation for noncompliance with city or state requirements related to fire suppression, requesting that the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department report the status of the properties appearing thereon annually to the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee and for other purposes.
Councilmember Waits.
I move approval, sir.
I'll second. Please prepare the vote.
Chair Hillis, were you the seconder?
Yes.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable on substitute. If we could read 9 and 10, 23R 3618 and 23R 3619, as they are similar items that will be held at the request of the administration.
A resolution by Councilmember Byron D. Amos authorizing the reemployment of the City of Atlanta Fire Rescue Department retiree Michael Winfrey as Deputy Chief for an annual salary not to exceed $138,369.88 pursuant to Section 3-505B of the Charter of the City of Atlanta and for other purposes. A resolution by Councilmember Byron D. Amos authorizing the reemployment of the City of Atlanta Fire Rescue Department retiree Alan Burton as Deputy Chief for an annual salary not to exceed $138,369.88 pursuant to Section 3-505B of the Charter of the City of Atlanta and for the purposes.
Motion to hold. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Amos. Please prepare the vote on those 2 items.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Those items will be held in committee. Item number 11, 23R 3622.
A resolution by Councilmember Byron D. Amos urging the mayor or his designee to conduct a feasibility study to establish a unit of parking enforcement officers to serve as dedicated enforcement for parking on city streets to ensure the safety of the city of Atlanta and for other purposes.
Councilmember Ramos.
Yes, sir. Motion to hold.
Motion to hold. I will second that. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item will be held. Moving on to item number 23R 3649.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the reemployment of City of Atlanta retiree Cartina Jefferson as a senior storekeeper within the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department Emergency Medical Service Division for annual compensation not to exceed $40,600.00 pursuant to Section 3-505C of the City Charter and for the purposes.
Make a motion to approve. Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 13, 23R 3650.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept a donation from the Atlanta Fire Foundation located at 1300 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia 30314, to provide a 1994 Ford ambulance valued at $15,000.00 for use as a reserve tactical medic support vehicle located at Atlanta Fire Station 7 on behalf of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department and for the purposes.
Make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. I believe that concludes our legislative agenda. No items coming off held.
No, Mr. Chair, we are complete.
Second. Will you bring it off?
Speaking to the mic.
So I want to bring 22R 3536 off held. I'm going to add my name to it.
Need to take a vote for that, or we just bring it in and then take a vote on?
We can just take a vote on the motion
We need to read it in first.
and add his name. Correct. One moment, please. Okay. A resolution by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone requiring all City of Atlanta in-rim review board hearings to be added to the Channel 26 live broadcast schedule. Regularly scheduled board hearings which are in conflict with any city committee meeting, public hearing, or any city mandated meeting shall be recorded by Channel 26 and added to the archives for viewing and for the purposes.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Councilmember Boone. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Oh. The vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. Item is favorable. Any other items coming off held, colleagues?
Mr. Chair, should we still amend the paper to add Councilmember Lewis's name? Oh,
Can't amend the paper.
Oh,
We've already adopted it.
okay.
All right, so that does conclude our legislative agenda. Colleagues, any questions, comments?
Yes, I would like to thank Chief Dancy and Deputy Chief Johnson for hosting a wonderful, wonderful awards banquet for Corrections Day, Corrections Week. We had a wonderful time. Fire was present, APD was present, so it was just a wonderful event. And to the chair of this committee, thank you for your support.
Any other colleagues with questions, announcements, well wishes? All right, we will stand adjourned by unanimous consent of members present.